Okay, so I think we now have our other business, which is the discussion with the county and town regarding Jackson Avenue North Sprain Road project. I know we have a lot of guests who have come to talk to us about this issue. Why don't you come up and join us at the table to the extent that is possible? I think, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you.
This will come back.
Yeah.
How are you? How you doing?
Thank you. I guess I'm representing the group.
Okay, sounds good. Tell us your name for the record.
My name is Thomas Madden. I'm Commissioner of Community Development for the town of Greenwood.
Okay.
Suzette Lopine, I'm with Westchester County Planning.
Come back to the table. Okay. So, Mary Jane, why don't you begin the conversation since you brought this matter to our attention?
Okay, thank you. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of officials from the Village of Ardsley. We have Trustee Beverly Levine, Frank Doherty, Chair of the Traffic Committee, and George Calvi, the Village Manager. The reason why I brought you all here today is we're talking about a very badly needed safety improvement which has been fraught over the years with difficulty. And we're bringing people to the table again to try to get some movement together so we can come up with a plan for these improvements that everyone can live with and we could get on the way to getting them done. By means of history, North Sprain Road and Jackson Avenue is in the traffic catch basin, if you will, for the massive Ridge Hill development in Yonkers. As part of a lawsuit, the Village of Ardsley, the Village of Hastings-on-Hudson, and the town of Greenburgh won inter alia in a lawsuit against the developer $5 million for traffic improvements. The $5 million to be applied to any combination of a list of proposed improvements that were included in the stipulation of settlement. That settlement was accomplished in 2007. The town of Greenburgh actually received and is holding the money in escrow since August or September of that year. We were on a 7-year time schedule. After 7 years, any funds of that $5 million that were unused would revert back to the developer. That would bring us to the end of summer 2014. There have been negotiations, brokered in part with the help of the chairman of this board, to get a 2-year extension on that. I don't know if Mr. Madden's prepared to speak to that, to the status of that today or not, but that's still an open question. In terms of the road improvements themselves, 2 of the high priority lists for all 3 municipalities were what's known as the Y intersection, where North Sprain Road meets Jackson Avenue. In order to get that one done and comply with engineering safety standards, we also have to do some work to remediate an S-curve on Jackson Avenue, which falls between the entrance to Sprain Ridge Park and North Sprain, the intersection with North Sprain Road. In order to do the Y intersection, we have to do the S-curve. In order to do the S-curve, we are going to need a narrow strips of land, both from number 1 St. Andrews Golf Course and number 2 County Parks, because Sprain Ridge Park is on the other side of Jackson Avenue. The reason we're here today is we have a fundamental disagreement between the county and the town in terms of the width of the lanes and the shoulders for the newly designed road. The width of those things will determine the amount of property that the town would need to take. There are some complexities in terms of engineering, in terms of which engineering standards, and in terms of basic, how many feet for this and how many feet for that will have to be decided. There had been some discussion back and forth, but things have stagnated for a number of months now. I know there is increasing concern about whether we would be at a permanent impasse or not. So I thought it appropriate at this point to call everyone together again to get some general ideas out on the table and hopefully come up with a process and perhaps some principles that will help bring the parties closer together so we could finally get the work done.
Okay, all right. What's the basic disagreement?
The basic disagreement right now is just to give a little bit more history on this, when we started to look at the roadway design here, we surveyed the road, we did the right-of-way drawings for this, and we came up with 3 different designs. One design that pushed it very far north into St. Andrews. St. Andrews would have ended up losing a green and several tee boxes. We came up with a middle design, which put the roadway a little bit further south. We would impinge onto part of the St. Andrews property, as well as we would actually have to move part of the culvert as part of the county channel right there, and move into part of the county parkland. The third design was as far south as possible, not to impinge any on St. Andrews property, and it moved it more into the county parkland and really moving the county channel much further to the south. Looking at just as part of our secret analysis, we felt that the second alternative was the best alternative because you took a little bit from St. Andrews and you took a little bit from the county. We met with the county 3 or 4 times discussing the different designs. As part of this design package, we looked at it as it's a rural arterial. It's a town road, and it was a rural arterial design standard that we did through here as opposed to an urban design standard. Just to clarify the two, an urban standard usually is closer to Central Avenue. You have a lot of driveways coming into it. You can go to a much narrower shoulder width. You have curbing, gutters, stormwater treatment facilities, and sidewalks along there. So that's where you get an urban standard from. When you actually look at the roadway section from really Sprain Brook, or the Sprain Parkway over to 9A, it is a rural standard. And we actually had a discussion and a phone call with New York State DOT on this, and they're actually ready they'll reclassify that roadway to a rural standard because they realized that there was an error made in the classification because of what they put on here. Like I said, they just sort of said urban standard all the way along because it was so close to Jackson, or to Central Avenue. So our design professionals came up with a plan, and we looked at originally design speed of 40 miles per hour. We have over 25,000 vehicles per day on this roadway, similar to the roads, I guess, that you're repaving right now. Much to a little bit different standard, though. And we have a large amount of accidents at this intersection. We've had, just along this stretch right here, when we did our accident analysis, we've had over 90 accidents in that area over a 6-year period. We've had 2 deaths there over the last couple of years.
2 deaths, you say?
2 deaths, yeah. So we were trying to make this really, it's a safety solution for this intersection because you have an S-curve that goes along Jackson Avenue up to North Sprain. And in order to make the intersection, this is where we've had the majority of the accidents, is we're trying to tee the intersection into Jackson Avenue. Now, this is the same design that we've had on the books probably since 1975 from what I found out, in doing the research on this. So we teed it up, and in order to make this T intersection work, you have to straighten out Jackson Avenue as part of this. So hence the reason why we had to go a little bit into the county as part of that second design. We've done test borings along there. The county, Kathleen let us go in there to do the test borings. We've figured out what type of rock we have in there and where we can actually move the roadway into. We've gone back several times. We've shrunk the roadway down. We've aligned the roadway quite a bit. And we originally were going from just over an acre of parkland that was needed. And this is, just to put it into context, it's about a 10-foot to 5-foot strip along just over, just under a half mile. Okay, so it's a very narrow strip that we need along the roadway, but it's all parkland right along there. So it's not a huge intrusion into the park itself. And where we're taking out, where we would need that land would actually be along part of the rock face there to straighten out and get rid of that S-curve. So we're not going into, in terms of the parkland itself, pristine parkland, we're taking rock out that is right along there. We've compromised and we've shrunk the roadway down to where we're at the point now is we need about 17,000 square feet of access into parkland along here. And so we've compromised down from the large amount to a very small amount. And most of the intrusion is a little bit right at the park entrance. Through an area right there, we'd improve the drainage along there as part of the stormwater. And there's a pipe right at that entrance there that goes into Greenberg. So we drain most of the park into Greenberg down through our channel, which we take care of. As part of our flood zone. And part of the rock on the corner there, and this is where the part of the design that comes in, is when you look at the design for this at a 40 mile per hour, according to AASHTO standards, it's about a 510 radius circle that you need to put on that corner in order to make it a gradual curve into the intersection at the North Sprain.
Thomas? Just got a little technical.
Okay,
there.
sorry.
Explain a little more.
All right. So, needless to say, this is the design that we've gone into. And we feel that this is, as part of our design professional, they said, we're willing, we can snap off on this. And this is the safety aspect of it. Now, we came back to the county as part of just going back to reducing the amount of parkland that we'd have to have access to. We moved down to 12-foot lanes and we did 8-foot paved shoulders with a 2-foot unpaved area. So it would be a 10-foot shoulder area we needed with the guardrails. The county said this is not acceptable. We would prefer 11-foot lanes with 4-foot shoulders based on an urban standard. But again, the town, we feel, and our design professional feels that it's not an urban standard that can apply here, because if we apply an urban standard, then we would have to sit there, put curbs and everything else on here. Again, with the amount of vehicles that are traveling along this roadway today, safety is paramount for this whole section. One thing that Legislator Shimsky has pointed out too is we have a lot of cyclists going along here. And that's one of the reasons why we prefer to have a little bit bigger shoulder on here to accommodate the cyclists along here. We've also identified this area as part of our comprehensive plan as a bike route from North Sprain along Jackson Avenue to hit 9A to head over to the North County or South County Trailway to head up. The other reason why we chose a little bit bigger area in here is, again, going back to safety, is in emergency situations. We have very little east-west connections in the county, as everybody's aware. We have really, when you go into Yonkers, you have one main road right through there, which of course goes along near Ridge Hill. Jackson Avenue is your next main east-west connection, then Ardsley, and then you go into Secor, Dobbs Ferry, and then into 119. Both Secor is very hard to get through. Dobbs Ferry is a little bit better, but then really our next east-west, major east-west connection is 119. So we've looked at this as, you know, how do we make this improvement for safety to get people from, if there's an accident on Sawmill, or to get them out of Yonkers as well, over to the Sprain Road Park. So it's not just a safety issue in terms of Ridge Hill. We're looking at a much bigger picture design along here for allowing bike access into this, safety access in case there's emergencies elsewhere, and then also improving the roadway to allow all that extra traffic that is coming into Ridge Hill, even though Ridge Hill is not fully operational yet, to allow us to have a much safer roadway, because we are getting people cutting through here to get down. That's where we sit
Okay.
right now.
Okay, and from the other point of view?
We've been working with Tom, as he said, over the past year on this project. At the end of this past year, we did, Tom was gracious enough to give us the CAD drawing, the computer drawing, and we prepared a design on an overlay of the drawing that he had. And in doing an analysis in-house as a team, there was a traffic engineer, myself, a landscape architect, and another civil engineer. We worked together to come up with the design. I believe that was shared with the town of Greenberg just in May, and we're waiting for a response to those considerations that we've made. We have altered the cross-section. One of the things I would like to say is that the existing cross-section out there is about 22 feet wide pavement. That's what's out there right now in this quarter-mile stretch of road. And what we've been looking at is about a 30-foot cross-section in our design that we proposed to the town of Greenberg. Their cross-section is 40 feet. And I have a few pictures if you'd like to look. The roadway is fairly narrow, and there are, some constraints along the side of the road that you may want to just look at. I think visually you'll be able to see it. In terms of the parkland alienation, there would be some takings of the Sprain Park, the park to the south, which I believe requires an act. There's also, and I think you can see in those pictures, there's some wetlands on the edge. There's a large culvert that goes under the road. There's a lot of work that would need to take place. Please understand that we all agree that the traffic signal at North Sprain Road and Jackson Avenue is a priority. The town did study that, and it's warranted. So that's something we all agree on. I think that the cross-section ultimately is where we are at, or where we're having some difficulty with. And I think that our cross-section is a compromise between what exists and what the town has proposed.
Now, just to add in as well, we have offered, as part of any design that we do, if we do have to take parkland, or if we can't get an easement to do that, the town is willing to give parkland to the county. We have land available the town owns that we'd be willing to give as a trade. As well, we've also offered to do all the remediation on the wetlands, to do additional wetlands planting, plus any trees that have come that need to be taken out, we've offered to replant the trees. Now, when we had my arborist go through and he made a list of the trees that are in good condition, we would not replace hazardous trees. I don't think that's fair to require that, but any trees that are in good condition, we would replace as part of this roadway project. As Suzette said, it's coming down to right now, it's just the design for the project, and that's sort of where we're at a little bit of a stalemate. I have talked to our design consultant. We are willing to come down to an 11-foot lane width, which is currently what's there right now. However, in terms of the shoulder itself, we feel that we need a little bit larger shoulder just to accommodate, again, the cyclists and a few of the other things, including storm drainage, because we're not putting curbs or sidewalks or anything else along here. So we got to be able to get that drainage off the roadway to make it safe.
Okay, so is the county's main concern is the alienation of parkland issue, or is it other safety concerns, would you say?
The county's not opposed to the project, we're in favor of supporting, we're just trying to minimize the impact on the park.
Right.
The other thing is, if you look at the drawings, I mean, with 10-foot shoulder width, I don't think the rest of the road has 10-foot shoulders, it'll only be this one section. So this makes me think of Ashford Avenue Bridge, where we have a bridge, and then we're restricted by the roads on either end of it.
Yeah, we have actually, just make a correction, when you go from North Sprain to Jackson, we have much larger shoulders there. From Springbrook over to Jackson Avenue is when we go into an urban design standard along that roadway there. Certain sections, you do actually have about a 14-foot shoulder along there, and then it narrows down as you move into Yonkers, into Central Avenue. Just because when you go to cross that section, again, you have that infrastructure in place. When you go along this section right here, we don't have any infrastructure in place at present, except for the one stormwater pipe coming through off of the Sprain Ridge Parkway driveway or roadway in that one section that crosses underneath the street into the Greenberg infrastructure.
Well, I mean, alienation of parkland is not an easy thing to do, and also you've missed the opportunity this year. Legislative session is going to end in a couple of days. So, does that provide a little bit of, it seems like we're here because of a impasse, Mary Jane, if I'm correct, that had some urgency because people were ready to sort of walk away. But since even if you had your druthers, you can't do what you want to do until next year anyway, because you need to get that legislation. It seems like there's a little bit more time to work out your differences.
One of the concerns that we had is, and I'm sorry, I don't know if the change has addressed it, we have a county house on the property, and from the original plan, the family would walk down their stairs onto a road.
Okay.
The whole front lawn was gone.
Mhm.
So is that obviously changed?
Yeah,
for this?
that's changed as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure, Mary Jo.
What I would say to that point, Madam Chair, is, once again, when we're talking about public works, you can't look at what the situation is today because everything is long developing, and by the time you do your approval process and your design process and your construction process, this takes time, and we have money that has a deadline attached. Thomas, do you know what the status of the application for the extension is?
Yes, we've talked to Forest City Radnor. They have agreed verbally to give us an extension on this.
Okay.
We are currently awaiting the paperwork from them.
Okay.
Once I get back again today, Town Attorney Tim Lewis was taking care of that, and I'll be following up again today with
Okay,
Forest City
great.
just to make sure they get the paperwork over
Great.
to us.
And again, if there's anything we could do to help expedite, we have lines of communication open here already, let us know.
No, we appreciate you stepping in already with Forest City.
And how long an extension were you able to?
I believe it was 2 years. We're asking to see if we can go to 3, and they might give us 3.
Okay. All right, so did I hear correctly that planning is waiting to hear back on some of the things that they?
Yeah, we've taken part of the plan that we have from the county, we've given it to our consultants. They are doing their analysis right now. I've asked for our consultant to give the correct right-of-way CAD file to Suzette, because the one that the county used was incorrect, and so it didn't work under the correct file. So we're gonna get that over to them as well, so that they can see the overlay, because when we did our comparison of our drawings to the county, we realized that there was an error in the county's drawings.
Okay, why is that?
They provided us with incorrect information. I mean, survey is a survey. You
Right.
should have a correct meets and bounds survey for your property line.
Yeah.
The correct file was actually in the CAD drawing.
Yeah, I mean, let me just say that as the former town supervisor of Boston, I could actually see that happening. That stuff like that does happen. So, is there any is it your point of view, Mr. Pisco or Commissioner do we? I'm sorry.
I'm
did
sorry.
It was a very late night last night.
I know.
Oh, I'm sorry. I swallowed the second half of that word. About the urban versus rural road, is that a point of disagreement still?
Every road in Westchester County right now is classified as urban.
Okay.
That's something that's handed down from the federal to the state level. So I'm not aware of a process by which, we unclassify a particular road to a rural standard.
To that point,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I don't have an engineering degree, and sometimes I can look at these things with a simplistic eye, but you look at these pictures, and you'd swear you were 150 miles somewhere north of here. This is clearly a road that was not designed to an urban standard, and as Thomas said, in order to convert it to an urban standard would involve millions of dollars that simply don't exist, and there's not a clear need for curbing all along it and so on at this point.
An urban arterial does not necessarily mean a curbed road.
Okay.
What an urban arterial allows us for, as designers, is more flexibility in terms of looking at the cross-section. generally, when you say rural, you're speaking about an area, maybe it's a farm, and you're building a new road, you're doing a new construction. What we deal with here in Westchester County is a lot of redevelopment of an area. So we have to work within the constraints that we have of the existing right-of-way. Urban arterial classification gives us that. It's not that it's more rural because, it looks more rural, or as we would judge it as, lay people.
Residents,
It's really about the flexibility of the designer.
Through the chair, Commissioner Madden, does this comport with your understanding?
With the
Or-
urban?
Yes.
As part of that, usually when you go to an urban type standard in terms of the design flexibility, it's usually on a 4-lane road that you can get away with a much narrower shoulder width. Unfortunately, with this one, with the amount of traffic that we have along here and the amount of accidents we have, even though we're trying to straighten the roadway out, that little bit extra shoulder to get our police officers off that road safely, away from the traffic with 25,000 vehicles per day,
Or getting them to the traffic?
getting them to the traffic, it helps out immensely. When you look at this, anytime we've had an accident here, we have to shut that roadway down completely.
Right. And there is no north-south road between North Sprain Road and
Exactly.
9A. And actually, there was one day, ironically, I was going to a Ridge Hill traffic meeting where there was a fender bender over by the Unitarian Church. And all of us had to try to U our way back on Jackson Avenue and wind our way down to 9A. And a few feet extra on a shoulder in a situation like that can help with emergency vehicles, obviously, and just keep traffic from piling up, completely immobilized for an indefinite period of time. My view of this, and once again, I hope I'm not too simplistic when I do it, is sometimes when you're talking about principles, it's very hard to compromise. When you're talking about dollars, or you're talking about feet and inches, you've got something that's often easier to work with. And I know that there are a lot of concerns with the yard, and there are obviously concerns with minimizing whatever's taken from the parklands. But if we could continue coming together and finally meet somewhere in the middle, we can finally get this done, and that's good for the people who use the park and have to attempt to travel on that road, as well as everyone who lives and commutes in the area.
Can I ask you a question about this? I'm sorry, Mr. Smith. Does the urban designation preclude the shoulder from being wider?
No,
Okay.
no, not at all, not at all. I think what's gonna constrain that in this location is the
Physical,
land to the
yeah.
side, physically speaking. Rock blasting and filling in wetlands and filling in streams, these are all pretty serious things, whereas, with a 4-foot shoulder, we don't really have to do all of that. We can still provide drainage, we can still do all of these things, we can still accommodate the bicyclist. It just makes it a little bit more doable from a construction sense.
Just to clarify, we're not gonna be blasting rock, it will be rock chipping, because when we did the test right there, we found everything was pretty soft. In terms of, we're not actually filling in any stream as well. What we'll be doing is working on part of the shoulder through a wetlands area, but we'll be mitigating that with additional wetlands construction as well.
Mr. Smith, and then I want to ask.
Great, thank you. Through the chair, thank you, Madam Chair. Two questions. First, as I said, the meeting will be ending soon, and we'll all leave the table, all right? The question is, from this point forward, as I understand it, the county is waiting for feedback from the town of Greenburgh. The town of Greenburgh, you are waiting feedback from your consultant. So it seems that we still have some area to discuss at this point, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. The second thing is, in the scope of the project, and as far as a preliminary, sense of what the cost of this project's going to be, how does the costing of the project and the money allocated for it at this point now that Greenburgh has match up with the cost of this project, as it may be anticipated to be under the various different scenarios that have been looked at?
Well, in terms of the project itself, originally I believe we had it costed out about $1.7 million. As we've been moving it further and further, it's actually costing us more. Right now, we have in terms of design. We're approximately, because we've had to redo the plans each time, we're about $100,000 in design over right now. And so that's now affecting putting a potential light at St. Andrews, which was one of the things that we had looked at and talked to the St. Andrews community, both the golf course and the residents there, saying, if we can get this done fairly efficiently, we should have some money left over, just because everything's cheap right now and you can get good construction, we might be able to get a light in there. The light, this would then, as part of this original design, we'd be able to knock off 3 of the different study designs that we did, because originally we did 12 different areas that we studied. This is a combination of 2 of those projects, and that light was a 3rd. So if we can get under the 2 million, we'd be able to get all of that done and knock out 3 projects out of the 12, as well as the 1 project we're doing in RC to widen out Sawmill River Road.
So, have we achieved anything here by coming all together? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Kelby, I'm sorry.
George Calvi, Village of Ardsley. Commissioner O'Connor, earlier you mentioned that there was some concerns about that the road widening would bring it to within 4 feet of the front of the house, I guess owned by, actually occupied by a county employee or a
Yes.
county retiree.
Yeah.
Currently in the
Employee.
Village of Ardsley in Macy Park, there are 2 homes also either occupied by county employees or county retirees, which were not at their original locations. I'm just wondering, are there any opportunities to explore whether or not that house could be relocated to a safer location?
Relocation is very, very touchy, and it's very expensive. The house that we're talking about has been there for a long time. I certainly would have to check to see what it would even, and it's kind of built into
Hillside.
the hillside. God knows what would happen if we tried to move it, to be honest with you. And I know we did move the other 2 that are by Macy Park, so we'd have to look into that. But I just wanted to ask you, in the design that you have now put back to Greenberg, how does that affect that front yard of that home?
It does not.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The 40-mile-an-hour versus 35-mile-an-hour issue, can those of you present discuss that a little bit?
Sure. When we did the original investigation of this roadway, we took both a traffic count as well as speed count for the area. Even with the S-curve and the amount of volume that we have going through there, we were averaging about 45 miles per hour was the speed of the traffic. Okay. Even though it's signed at 35 miles an hour, we have quite a few people speeding through the area. This is what's causing, as part of the unsafe conditions. We did a design speed at 40. It will still be designed. It will still be signed at 35, and it actually would allow us, with this new design that we proposed, we'd actually be able to station a police officer there to be able to have and issue speeding tickets. Right now, there's no safe place to even set up a car to control that speeding along there. The best place we could put it in is really on the driveway into the park area, on the county side, but that's it. But there's no other way to actually do speed enforcement along there.
Great.
There's a gentleman here from St. Andrews.
Yeah. Sure,
Richard
sure.
Borisov, I'm president of the Homeowners Association.
Please come and sit with us.
These are very frustrating.
So you could speak into these little
Okay.
mesh things on the table.
These are very frustrating meetings that we've been having for a year now for the residents of St. Andrews. I don't believe that any resident of St. Andrews has been seriously injured in a traffic accident coming out of St. Andrews yet. And I am certain that will happen if this isn't approved and gotten into. I mean, those of you who have not been in St. Andrews, whether in the golf club or in the home, we have the same exit, it is almost impossible. You see the 45 miles an hour, you're coming out of a blind left turn with people coming, and most of the people I see are coming 55 miles an hour. And it is, it's really an unacceptable safety hazard for the people of St. Andrews. And to have, I know nothing about whether it's urban or rural or 10 feet or 11 feet. This road's got to be fixed, it's got to be improved. Any improvement is better than nothing at all. And I just encourage you to make a deal here that is acceptable to us, that's acceptable to the golf club, that's acceptable to the town of Ardsley and to Greenberg as quickly as possible, so we can go ahead with this. Thanks.
Thank you.
He would like us to.
Yes, oh, absolutely. Why don't you step up here so the mic can pick you up too?
My name is Victor Van Klemperer. I'm the president of the St. Andrews Golf Club. So Dick and I have slightly diverging interests here. We've had the pleasure of Mr. Madden and his presentation at our club and of the county executives at our club as well. Obviously, we would understand that taking land away from a golf club is not everybody's priority and not everybody's wish. Clearly, our club, for all of those who don't know it, is one of the oldest golf clubs in America. It's about to celebrate its 125th anniversary next year, which will include some substantial names of people coming up to visit us. The solution put forward by the county, and I don't want to get too close here, is the one that encroaches on our property the least. So if that has any bearing on the way that your decisions go here, I think it would be very helpful to the club itself if we could follow, as I say, the proposals by the county here. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak this time?
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, my name is Ross Crolius, and I'm a resident of Ardsley, but I'm here with another member of the First Unitarian Society of Westchester, which is on Old Jackson Avenue, and which is impacted by this as well quite a lot. We actually hosted a meeting about this subject last fall. And so we are one religious organization there. There are two on Old Jackson Avenue right there. There's also the Jehovah's Witness. And obviously they're very busy during the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. In addition to that, we have a small nursery school that attends during the day, 5 days a week, that is growing. And so our concerns obviously are similar to St. Andrews, and that the safety issues in particular. And we urge you to consider this very seriously and to reach some sort of a solution. Thank you.
Anybody
Anyone
else? Okay.
Okay.
Mary Jane, quick,
Yeah.
Through the chair, if I could, how does your organization view the county proposal? We understand how the club views it, but how do you view it?
Well, obviously, we're not as impacted with that as the golf course or the development. But from what we have a task force, a committee that has been following this issue, and we'd like personally to see something, a compromise, and to us, the compromise, number 2, seems to be the best solution, because it does not impact either side. But in terms of safety issues, it will make a huge difference. Frankly, I travel that road a great deal, as well as others, and I know exactly what we're talking about in terms of how it will impact the park. And Tom is right. It does not impact the park much, if you consider the second alternative in particular, in my view. And of course, the other issue that is very important to us, which is the addendum to this, and that is the drainage issue. We've had serious problems with flooding, and we are concerned about how. So we've been told that this issue has to be resolved first before they move forward with matters of improving drainage.
Right.
Thomas?
Sure.
Just to speak on that drainage issue, one of the things, like you said, we have that drainage pipe that comes across from the county park line into this. As part of this area, we have a drainage district that has been set up 20-odd years ago. We have money in there, so once we can finalize this roadway design and agree upon it, we can then start to fix the flooding issue that is at the base of St. Andrews and going through the old Jackson Road right there, as well as trying to address some of the county drainage stuff. We have Dolph Rothfeld who's going to be doing that design, but we can't move forward with this until we, again, have a final roadway design on this. So that's sort of, there's other pieces that are gonna fall into play with this as well. So we're trying to, we're taking a very much a big picture look at this area, trying to solve numerous problems that have presented itself. And we've got a chance to make a solution here off of just one roadway that, again, is not coming from taxpayer money, it's actually coming from developer money. And so this is, I look at this as, it's a real win for us financially, because again, we're not having the residents pay out.
Can I, just to clarify my understanding, the most recent submission from the county hasn't been giving the public airing that the three options that you told us about were, is that correct?
That, I don't mean to speak for you guys, that was presented to St. Andrews. Now, our consultant has looked at it, again, found errors with the right-of-way in it that would show the roadway not in the proper position. And so, again, we've asked our consultant to give us a new CAD file showing the right-of-way so that Suzette can overlay it, her design, on that to see if it matches up.
Because it does seem to me that there is actually movement happening here, because there is some communication that's incomplete at this point. So the notion of walking away doesn't really seem like that's a viable thing to do.
I really don't want to walk away from this project. However, we are sort of getting to the point where, in terms of costs, it's starting to get too much, and we have to start looking at other projects that we can move upon very quickly. The tough part as well with this roadway design is you do have the rock face that is along Jackson Avenue, but you've also got a county sewage pumping station. So we always joke that we're sort of caught between a rock and a pump place all the way along there. And so we have to be very, very careful of that, because if we move this design too far to the north, we then impinge on a stream next to the county pump and onto the county pump station land right there. So again, we've been trying to be very environmentally sensitive in doing this design, but still meet the objectives of what's happening all around it as well.
Okay, Ms. Shimsky?
Okay, did you have something to say in response to that, Suzette? No. Okay, all right. At this point, I think there was valuable discussion that happened here, and I think it was important for everyone to hear the merits of both sides. And as I said, I really hope as we go on, we'll be able to meet somewhere in the middle on this.
Yeah, and to that point, maybe a useful next step for us as this committee would be to have people, Tara just recommended to me that we should have everyone, all the stakeholders, maybe give us a one-page or a paragraph on where they stand, so that would help us to sort of help facilitate the process. And any other stakeholder in the audience who would like to do that as well, if you want to get that to us, that might help us to, facilitate the larger picture.
Ultimately, I don't see us as a committee making the decision on which option is selected.
No, clearly not, but it will help us to guide the process.
I think that trying to stay on some sort of timetable at this point would be good. Commissioner Madden, when do you think you can get your how quickly do you think you could get your next submission to the county?
Well, my BlackBerry's been ringing like crazy right now, so I suspect, I put the gears to the consultant again this morning to get that over to us, so I suspect I could probably have that by later on today over to the county. So we'll get the right-of-way drawing. Again, we look forward to working with the county on this project to see if we can come up with a solution. Because this is, again, in terms of safety and everything else, we think this is an absolute winner of a project, and it solves so many other issues in that area that would allow us to at least help out the residents.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the county, first of all, I still have not seen the county plans. And I hope that I'd like the county to give them to me, but I'm sure other people have them in their files. And I would certainly like to have them in my files, so I can compare to the known that I have, which is essentially the town plans. Second of all, given your understanding at this point of what you think you will have to do in response to what Thomas sends you, when do you think you will be able to get back with a response?
We've prepared conceptual plans, and I've actually given Tom the AutoCAD drawing. There's nothing to preclude them from having their engineer take the design that we've done and overlay it on this meets and bounds that he has. Really, we only provided them with the conceptual because it seemed like we couldn't come to terms with what could possibly happen in this road section without putting some pen to paper. So we've provided that
Okay.
service. But really, at this point, it is in the hands of their consultant to look at what we've done and propose this new design.
Yeah. Just for clarification, when we did meet with the county, they did show us a design that had 11 foot. It was a design of 35 miles per hour design speed. And so in terms of the radius of the corner, right at the old Jackson Avenue intersection, it was a little bit less of a curve, a little bit sharper, and it still had a little bit of the S-curve in there. And they provided as part of that 11-foot lanes with 2-foot shoulder, a 4-foot shoulder, a 6-foot shoulder, and an 8-foot shoulder, using the impacts of where it would be. So what we want to do is, and we've given this to our consultant, is to overlay that conceptual design with the correct right-of-way to see if we can come to some type of.
To see where each line would bring us all.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
that would be useful.
Yeah.
No, no.
So we're hoping to be able to present that back to the county and also get the county with the proper CAD file that they can, just without all the extraneous stuff that comes in CAD files, just the right-of-way itself. So then we're both working as opposed to having the planning department pull out all the different layers.
All right, so I think we've seen a little bit of movement. Anything that you would like to submit to us, we're happy to act as facilitators in any way that you would like for us to do a comment.
Just a quick question, because earlier, you did mention how the condition is so bad that you can't even put a police car to enforce traffic issues. Is it feasible to think that maybe as the traffic is closer to the properties, to the houses, because people are having a hard time coming in and out of their own yards because of the speeding traffic, is it feasible to think that maybe somewhere a speed bump or something could be put there, and you know how they do it when they have the arrows, and so the
Yep.
drivers will be warned that there is a speed bump ahead? Does that make any sense?
On an arterial,
No.
that kind of device isn't really practical because it's an arterial.
Okay.
But however, I think a lot of, if you look at standards that we've been using in terms of engineering, the smaller road cross-section actually helps to guide people to actually drive slower rather than quicker. This is, I believe, not this area 30 miles an hour. This is not, where you should be doing 45. Okay, you've got the golf course, you've got several driveways, you've got 2 churches. You really shouldn't be driving at those speeds anyway. So you don't want to facilitate the additional speeding by widening the road. And
Right, and having the traffic light there, of course, will hopefully, the ultimate traffic calming device.
Hopefully the 2 traffic lights we can put in
Right.
would help out. Like I said, we've also talked about doing the radar gun that sort of sits on a pole and it says your speed through here. But again, like I said, right now, we can't even get our police officers down there to do speed checks or to enforce the speed limit because there's no safe place for them.
Okay. All right, so I guess to be continued, and hopefully there'll be some kind of coming together.
Okay, and
Thank you.
keep us informed, and we'll see where it goes, and I'll.
And how we can help,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
okay,
absolutely.
right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Before-
everyone, for
before
coming
we-
today.
thank